Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about movie tie-in games, but one in particular, and that is Die Hard Trilogy, and why this game is so much fun, why I enjoy this game, and why you should definitely check this game out. So with that being said, sit back, relax, and let's take a trip back to 1996. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on the history of the bad movie games and the good movie games, so I'm just going to name off a few of the bad and the good. Now, your bad movie video games, you have things like Universal Soldier, Last Action Hero, Time Cop, Alien 3, RoboCop 3, Judge Dredd, Demolition Man. Very horrible games, and my clue to those being bad should have been the fact that I could never get past the first level of any of those games. That should have been my first clue of, hey, this game stinks. But then you have your good movie tie-in games. Games like Jurassic Park, the Disney games, Aladdin, Lion King, Jungle Book, Toy Story 1 and 2, Batman 89 was really good, and then you have your 007 games, GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, World Is Not Enough. All fun games. Yes, I know Tomorrow Never Dies gets some flack here and there, but it's still a fun game. Then later on you had games like Alien Isolation, which was really fun, Predator Concrete Jungle, which was great, Friday the 13th on PS4 and Xbox One, which was a great game, but they shut down the servers way too soon, and that's due to some other stuff happening outside of the game that is out of the developer's control, so that's why that happened on that situation. But the game we were talking about today is Die Hard Trilogy. Now, a little history lesson on the Die Hard series in video games. There was a game on the NES from LJN as well, which was not very good, but then you had the two Die Hard Trilogy games on the PS1, Sega Saturn, Die Hard Trilogy 1 and 2. Then you had the Die Hard Arcade on the Sega Saturn as well as the arcade. Then you had Die Hard Nakatomi Plaza on the PC. Then you had Die Hard Vendetta, which was probably the last Die Hard video game ever made. That was released on the GameCube, but also the PS2 and Xbox within the UK, which is kind of weird. I don't know why they did that, but maybe I can kind of understand it when I tell you what I'm going to tell you next. Bad Boys and Beverly Hills Cop, two of the worst movie tie-in games to release on the PS2, were only released in the UK, and I've heard they're just awful. Both of them were just awful games. So it's probably a good thing we didn't get those. I probably would have played them still, and I probably would have hated both of them. But Die Hard Trilogy basically takes the first three movies, again, trilogy, because they had not really talked about making a fourth movie at this time. And each one of the first three movies is broken up into its own genre of game. And I'm going to talk about each one of them in detail because they're so vastly different from each other. So with that being said, let's start with Die Hard 1. Alright, coming up first we have Die Hard 1. Now, I really enjoyed this segment of the game because it was your typical third-person arcade shooter, similar to other games such as Apocalypse on the PS1 starring Bruce Willis. Now, yes, I felt like that was kind of a Die Hard in space kind of game, also mixed with Fifth Element kind of thing, because it was released a few years after Die Hard Trilogy, and I feel like they took the gameplay from this game and used it for that game as well, because it controls almost the same way. The gameplay, though, is nothing new to the arcade-style shooters. It really doesn't feel like anything else other than the Die Hard arcade from the Sega Saturn and arcades, minus the beat-em-up aspect. You do get some power-ups and everything that I will talk about in a few minutes, but I feel like this is what Max Payne would have been like had it been released on the PS1. You will go through each level with the same objective in mind, which is to defeat enemies and save hostages that are in danger. Though every few minutes you will get bombarded with even more enemies. So let's say you're 3 away from completing the level, you get 10 more that show up in an elevator and have to defeat them as well, so it goes from 3 to 13. So each level will generally take about anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes just to complete. With every few levels you will have to fight a boss who looks just like the other characters, but the only way you know he's the boss is because he has a big title above his head that says boss in big bold letters. Each level does end with you having to defuse a bomb within a time limit, so it's about 30 seconds to defuse the bomb. However, if you miss that time limit, it is game over. You do get a game over screen and all that. You have to start back over. So this can be a little bit stressful just because you might not know where to go because it doesn't actually show you where the bomb is. You have to kind of just go around the map trying to find it, which I do recommend zooming out of the mini-map just to see the full level layout and everything so you can kind of see where the blinking red dot is. And if you find that blinking red dot, you know you're in the right direction. However, it might show up behind a wall and you might think, okay, there's a doorway here, where is it? But actually you have to go through another doorway just to get there. So just know that it's always going to be inside of an elevator shaft, and that's where you need to go to find the bomb just to defuse it. When it comes to the hostages though, they tend to blend in with the enemies, so you might accidentally hit them when you're trying to hit somebody else. And one thing that sucks about this is if they don't get to escape fully, you don't get a boost in your high score or anything. You actually lose some points on that, so you want to try not to kill the hostages by accident. However, every few levels you get a bonus level, so you get a chance to save as many hostages as you can and then pick up some items to use throughout the game, which I'm going to talk about right now. The item pickups, you'll get multiple weapons to use, such as submachine guns, light machine guns, 2 types of shotguns, as well as your standard handgun, which I don't recommend using as much. Now, I will say there is a cheat code to get unlimited ammo and invincibility. I highly recommend using that in the game, because once you enter the unlimited ammo code, you can change your weapon every time you use it. So if you don't want to use the handgun, you can use maybe the shotgun or the light machine gun. I prefer the light machine gun just because of how much damage it does to all the enemies and everything. But you also get multiple grenades in the form of hand grenades, landmines, tear gas, and incendiary rounds. Those are highly recommended for when the groups of enemies show up in the elevators. Just toss a grenade, it'll take them all out in one hit. One big bloody mess. Now, I did mention that this was basically an arcade game, and it wouldn't be that way without random food pickups in boxes and trash cans like hot dogs, sodas that regain your health. But you can also pick up body armor and health packs for full recovery, which is good to keep an eye out for. Now that you've heard a little bit about Die Hard, let's see what Die Hard 2 has for us. Die Hard 2 is your typical arcade first-person shooter similar to games like Virtua Cop, Time Crisis, and Crisis Zone. The game actually has more in common with those 3 games, such as the crosshairs zooming into an enemy or arrows pointing in certain directions to imply that there is danger off-screen. Something that was pretty cool about this mode though is that you could use the PlayStation mouse to play this part of the game, and I know those are very hard to come by these days, but it really does help if you can find one, because the controller can be kinda janky and stiff at times. More on that when we get to Die Hard 3. Something else I would like to add about this mode is that civilians will constantly get in your way, so it's really hard to avoid hitting them, and they do blend in with the enemies just like they did in Die Hard 1, because the graphics weren't the best, as I mentioned before, and it's very hard to tell who is who when you get to certain spots. But try to avoid them if you can, especially when the screen starts to get distorted and move around and jump around when you get hit by a knife, or when the camera decides to just pan left and right really fast and you're just kind of wondering what's going on. But much like all arcade games, you do get a number of upgrades and items. For your health, you get things such as a soda, bag of chips, hot dog. Everything you got from Die Hard 1 is in this one as well. When it comes to weapons, you do get other items as well, and they do actually name the weapons, so you do get explosive shotgun shells and an M16, and the more you pick up the M16, the more you're likely to keep that gun for the rest of the game. Same with the MP5, you can pick that up more, you get to keep it for basically the remainder of the game. You also get dual Berettas that you can pick up if you get enough ammo, and it does help to have those too, but eventually it does go away once you start using more of the ammo and you basically go back to using your M16, which I do recommend just using that gun instead, because it will help a lot. Lastly, I want to bring up the special weapons, which are a grenade and a rocket launcher. If you ask me, it's a little bit overkill, but both these weapons do help with a lot of the later levels when you get more enemies kind of just bombarding you and everything, and you have so many people in front of you, you're trying to figure out how am I going to get past this. Just toss a grenade at them to blow them all up in one hit. Pretty much, it'll keep that high score up, but it'll also affect if you hit any civilians or anything like that. I do highly recommend playing this game as well with cheats, because you do get to get unlimited health and unlimited ammo to keep your special weapons. Not necessarily your main weapons, but your special weapons, you can keep more of those and get unlimited ammo of those as well. Now, we've taken a look at Die Hard 2, but let's jump into Die Hard 3 and see what that has in store for us. And I tell you, it's not pretty. Now, Die Hard 3 was probably my least favorite part of this game. In fact, I actually don't like it at all. I had so much trouble playing this when I was a kid because the controls are so janky, and I did mention that they were very hard to control, and it's very stiff in this game, or in this version, this part of the game. Basically, your goal for this is similar to Die Hard 3. You're driving through the city of New York trying to get to each bomb before it explodes. However, the timer goes pretty fast if you ask me, and I found myself dying a lot. Every time I played this game, I would die constantly. So I recommend, again, use unlimited lives, because that will help you. You'll get a game over in pretty much a minute if you don't use that code. So basically the goal is to go follow the compass. It's really hard to tell where it's going because you'll have a red arrow and a blue arrow, and I believe the blue arrows point towards like time and points and other stuff that you can pick up, like turbochargers and everything. But your main goal is to make it to each bomb before it explodes. Now, throughout the level, you'll have the Samuel L. Jackson character talking to you, telling you to take a left or a right. But it's really hard to tell when he's saying that because there's so much going on. There's so much noise going on, so much music going on. And it's really hard to tell when he's saying that because when I was playing this earlier, I couldn't tell that he was saying that and I was just following the compass. But also, if you listen, you'll hear him say, okay, take a left up here, take a right up there. And it's really convenient once you get that bomb to explode and or get it to not explode and everything. But again, the controls are very, very stiff. It's almost like Driver, except Driver was a little more easy to control. This game, you don't get the option to use a analog stick, so you're stuck with the D-pad. And again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it is very, very stiff trying to turn left and right. And I believe reverse, you have to actually hit the down arrow on the D-pad to basically back up and move. And you'll find yourself getting caught up and twisted and turned around so many times. In fact, the footage you're seeing now, you can see I've been dying a lot in it. Very hard to control, but you do get that unlimited lives code, which will help. Now, each level ends with you going into a train tunnel or a subway tunnel, basically racing another truck. And I want to say it's from the scene in the movie when all the trucks went into the construction site. Your goal in that mission basically is to go from point A to point B and try and get ahead of that truck before it hits the bomb, because if it hits the bomb and explodes, you start the level over again and have to do it all over again. And it's even harder to control inside of the subway tunnels because of how, you know, narrow each area is. But every once in a while in each level, really, except for these two levels, and I think that's the bonus level, is the subway tunnel. But each level, once you get a certain amount of bombs diffused and taken care of and everything, you'll see what's called a bomb car, which is essentially the boss of this part of the game. You have to catch up to it, hit it enough times for the life bar to go down. But again, I'm going to repeat it again, the controls are so janky and stiff that it is very hard to get a grasp on where you're going. And those bomb cars will turn left and right real fast, and you'll end up missing the turn and just having to turn around. And meanwhile, the timer's going on and you're trying to not have the timer run out. But I will say, I don't believe there is an unlimited time code. I think they did not put that in here. I've checked, but I did not see one. So definitely take advantage of the unlimited time, or the unlimited lives and the unlimited turbos if you can find one of those codes to work, because one of them didn't work if I'm remembering correctly. But I know that they did fix this mode in Die Hard Trilogy 2, and I do want to cover that one in a future episode because that one did take everything from this one and improved it in the second game. But let's go ahead and get into my final thoughts as we wrap up this episode. I'm not gonna lie, but this game has not aged well. Even for a game that I first played in 2000, it still looked pretty bland and ugly for its time. And I know the game released in 1996, and it just didn't age well at all throughout the years. And this is like an early PS1 game too, so I can't fault it for that because I know that the graphics weren't the best in early PS1 games. However, I don't want that to be a reason for you not to play this game. I know I said some negative things about Die Hard 3, but you might actually play this one and find it to be very fun and enjoyable. I myself just did not enjoy that one. My favorite part of this entire game has to be Die Hard 2 because of the arcade style, and that is the one that I played the most when I was a kid. Now, I definitely say pick it up if you can find it. It is not available on the PS3. I know that the only option for this is to get a physical copy, which can run you about $15 if you can find it, you know, in a store somewhere, in a retro shop, or online anywhere. It can run you about 15 bucks, which isn't too bad. Now, the Sega Saturn version is a little hard to come by and a little more expensive. It's about $70 from what I was seeing online, and I believe that's just because Sega Saturn games are so rare these days. They're all very expensive. Even Sega CD games are very, very expensive these days. Very hard to come by. Every time I've seen one, it's been in the 70s and 80s for how much they want to charge for it. So it is very hard to come by that Sega Saturn one. I know there are other ways to do it, but we won't talk about that here. As we come to the end of the video though, I would like to know what your favorite movie tie-in game is, whether it's good or bad. And also, what is your favorite Die Hard movie? Because I know I talked a lot about the first three today, but I want to know what your favorite movie is from this series. Let me know down in the comments below. I would like to thank you again for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I always enjoy making these videos because it gives me a chance to revisit the past and introduce these older games to a newer audience who might be interested in trying them out for themselves. But it also gives me a chance to bring back the memories to those older fans who used to play these games back in the 90s and early 2000s, such as myself. But as always guys, be sure to hit that thumbs up and ring that bell to be notified of when videos go live. share it with your friends and family, and I'll see you next time.